Greetings, Dragon Ball fans, and welcome to the 7th part of What If Time Travel Was a One-Way Ticket, where we follow future Trunks' life after he traveled into the past, knowing that it was entirely a one-way trip, his mother and everything he knew now lost to him forever. Previously, we saw the appearance and subsequent end of the wrong androids, followed by the locating of Dr. Gero's secret laboratory. After 17 and 18 had their objectives removed via deprogramming, they almost got to go their separate ways, except for one minor issue. Future Trunks just could not bring himself to trust these two, not after what he had seen them do in his future. So, he had taken on the role of parole officer, or stalker, depending on your point of view, and had kept close watch on them. As it turns out, a little too close for Lazuli's liking. When eventually confronted by the girl, Trunks laid the future bare, and seeing her unexpected emotional reaction, he kind of fled the scene. Unbeknownst to them, though, Trunks' own future version of Cell had found his 17, alone and slightly insane after having watched his sister, the only thing he actually cared about, be torn apart by the time displacement field that enveloped future Trunks. The then semi-perfect Cell then found the cavern below the ruins of Capsule Corp and figured out how to go to the only place he knew his remaining meal was available. With no use for Lapis, he was cast aside and Lazuli was quickly consumed. Perfect Cell then went on to challenge the world's best to a tournament to decide the fate of that world. Future Trunks, or I guess just Trunks rather, since Bulma's son with Vegeta is called Boxer now, decided to accompany the aggrieved machine into the Room of Spirit and Time to train. They were joined by Piccolo, and both made some massive gains. Lapis is now much evolved, and appears a lot more like Super 17 from the GT series, as well as gaining much strength through the actual training and meditation. After Lapis sacrificed himself for Trunks, the boy from the future finally broke through to Super Saiyan 2 and finished Cell off with a final massive Kamehameha in honor of his fallen master, Gohan. The 7 years that followed saw Trunks relaxing in a similar way to Gohan in the original series, with 1 or 2 minor exceptions. Seeing their willingness to sacrifice, Trunks had struck up a friendship with Lapis and, after beating around the bush a bit, something a little more intimate with the really quite beautiful Lazuli. When Babidi showed up and released Majin Buu, all Hiffle broke loose. Trunks' failure to keep up his efforts were compounded by Lazuli's legacy code being reactivated, and then his father, Vegeta, also falling prey to Babidi's magic. Moments after the revelation that Lazuli was in fact pregnant, and then feeling Vegeta give everything to kill Majin Buu, Trunks was whisked away to the Kai's world and began training with Gohan to unlock various potentials. These were also not the only potentials to be unlocked though, as both Lapis and Lazuli had been tuned carefully by Gero to limit their output, the upper reaches of which could actually start to damage their own bodies. Bulma does for them in a 30-second patch note what the Elder Kai took a day to do for Trunks. She has given them access to the full range of their power, as well as securing them against any future reprogramming. It's likely not close to the ultimate form in itself, but Lapis for one, with all his extra training, could probably go toe-to-toe with a Super Saiyan 3, if such a thing even existed in this continuity. While Buu had managed to absorb Piccolo, Lapis, Lazuli, Krillin, and several others, his efforts were hampered by his second absorption, Lapis, whose shield bubble had allowed him to dig around inside and eventually free everyone with a bit of help from the freed Krillin. The Potara fusions of Trunks and Gohan, and Lapis and Goku, named Truhan and Laku respectively, made surprisingly short work of the deadly Majin, before defusing almost an hour later. Yes, that implication is correct. Lapis is at this point stronger than Goku. 4 years later, Beerus, the god of destruction, has made himself known, and with plenty of Saiyans milling about, the ritual went off without a hitch, once again bumping Goku all the way to the top of the ladder. At least, if he could somehow replicate that Super Saiyan God power again. Trunks then discovered that his father had surreptitiously approached Whis for some extra training, and not wanting to be anywhere but at the top of his game, he was wrestling with the desire to ask as well. Lazuli, as it turns out, was happy to let Trunks go, despite that leaving her alone for extended periods of time with their daughter Marble. She's acutely aware of his need to stay relevant, capable of facing anything that might appear to threaten his new home. He then invited his friend Gohan to come along as well, and managed to convince him on condition that Goku, who had also been unaware of Vegeta's excursions, can instantly transmit them there and back to minimize the impact on his work and home duties. Their first trip to Beerus's homeworld was not at all what the three of them expected. Whis, for one, was quite pleased with his decision. He usually had to busy himself with all these menial chores, but no more. He now has not one, but 4 helpers, even if one of them isn't entirely committed. However, when Gohan asks Goku to take him back that evening, even Vegeta, the most committed of them, jumps at the chance to be home again with his family. Fortunately, the twice-fused Piccolo is able to muster just enough power to give Goku something to lock onto, and all 4 of them are brought home that evening. Trunks checks in with Lazuli to find that she and Marble are not at home. It turns out that she had spent the day doing baby shopping with her new friends, Videl and Marin. After finding out that they were also going to have children, they had quickly found themselves becoming friends. Though Bra was not her first, even Bulma occasionally found herself roped into their group when she wasn't busy digging around in one laboratory or another. Said group is finally located at Krillin and Marin's not exactly modest house, and all breathe a sigh of relief. Lazuli was not really expecting to see Trunks for a while, but Marble is thrilled enough for her daddy to show up. Gohan is more than happy to see that Videl seems to be coping very well without him, and when she parrots Lazuli's line to Trunks about being the best he can be, he feels much better about heading off to train more frequently. Chi-Chi, however, is less than thrilled when she learns that Goku had come back, but then immediately returned to continue his training. The ladies commiserate, and the offer is made to include her in their growing posse of badass mothers. When they find themselves at the end of their first full week of training on Beerus's, sort of world thing, they wait for Goku to come and take them home, but he is oddly reluctant. He's been trying, without much success, to replicate that Super Saiyan God power, but he just can't seem to get it. When Gohan and Vegeta both get a bit irritated and confront him, he makes an offhanded comment that why can't they just learn it as well and save him the trouble? While the comment could have been construed as a bit rude, they all share a glance, and Gohan for one is smiling at the thought. To be able to use instant transmission? That could be handy. So after that weekend back home with their families, Goku takes Trunks and Gohan to Yardrat before returning to Beerus's world to satisfy the salivating mouth of Whis with that crate full of fresh food. It doesn't take Pibara long to see that both Trunks and Gohan are about as good and kind-spirited as they come. Trunks takes about as long as Vegeta does in the Moro arc, while Gohan's keen mind allows him to plow ahead. Once he's finished the basics and picks up instant transmission, he thanks them and bidding Trunks farewell, for now, he vanishes, heading home to celebrate. Trunks is a bit sad to be on his own, but finds that no longer having to compare his progress to Gohan's frees his thoughts to focus. After learning the core of spirit control and then instant transmission, Pibara suggests that healing would be best suited for the scarred boy from that lost future. No sooner has Trunks finished training in the arts of healing when he senses something oddly familiar, but much stronger. That almost feels like that Frieza guy he'd effortlessly dispatched shortly after arriving in this time, but much more powerful. How could that be? He appears on Earth to see the no longer mechanized final form Frieza duking it out with Gohan and Lapis. There are bits of broken soldiers scattered around the massive crater below the current battle, but after searching frantically for bits of earthly survivors, he spots the rest of the Z-Fighters gathered together and watching, as they do. His arrival does not go unnoticed by Frieza, however, and the tyrant breaks from the pair and charges in to face down the still not Super Saiyan boy that had so casually cut him down, sending him to that literal hell all those years ago. When Frieza finds his much improved fourth form lacking against his spiky-haired but non-Super Saiyan, he is forced to break out his new form. Now significantly outclassed by Golden Frieza's power, Trunks nods to Gohan as he draws the jet-black sword from his back. In another timeline, Frieza would probably take umbrage at the sight of the blade, but in this here and now, he is less than impressed. At least until the blade comes spearing towards him, way faster than he'd expected. This guy isn't even a Super Saiyan, and yet he's showing surprising strength. Unfortunately for Trunks, his much improved ultimate form just isn't enough to overpower Golden Frieza, so he finds himself being pushed back and playing a waiting game as the tyrant cackles in delight. The cackling ceases abruptly when Gohan reappears with Goku and Vegeta on hand. That's the one that had humiliated him so, that Goku guy. And what's this? Vegeta? Would not have expected that. But no matter. They're all here to bask in his glorious new power. With his golden form already on display, there is little fanfare or one-upmanship to be had. and seeing Trunks visibly struggling while Frieza toys with him, Goku unveils his new form, Super Saiyan God with the power of a Super Saiyan. Or, Super Saiyan Blue. Trunks lands nearby and says something to them as he resheathes his blade and walks on, towards the waiting group. Yeah, Goku had felt it pretty quickly as well, and Vegeta can see it now too. Frieza's new form is as impressive as ever, but it's still burning through his stamina way too fast. If Trunks hadn't thrown in the towel and managed to drag things out a bit longer, he totally could have won. But he had felt the shift in power already, and had much more important things to worry about. Gohan, and more so Piccolo, aren't in the best of shapes, and he wants to show his friends what he'd recently learned from the Ardratians. As Piccolo and then Gohan are healed up to full, without the need of any Senzu, Goku and Frieza have their battle. For a moment, some of the spectators seem worried that even Goku seems to be lacking slightly to the might of this golden tyrant. But Trunks seems unconcerned and says that it'll be over soon. Frieza's strong, but look carefully, and you'll feel it. Frieza is then forced to pause for a moment when he sees Beerus and Whis arrive to sample that treat Bulma had attempted to offer them over an hour ago. Then, just as he's about to continue, that flaw makes itself painfully obvious to anyone who'd missed it. Painful especially to Frieza. Having broken out the golden form that much earlier, Frieza now finds himself back in his fourth form, to which of course Goku still drops his guard. Fortunately, Sorbet's careful maneuvering had not gone unnoticed by some of the extra eyes on hand. Artificially enhanced eyes at that. The beam that was meant for Goku instead strikes a jet-black blade that materializes in its path in Trunks' hands. The beam ricochets off the blade in a slightly new direction and ends up piercing Frieza's chest, dropping him to the ground. Sorbet watches in horror as his master gasps and chokes, staring daggers back at the little man, his shaking hand raised, finger pointing, and glowing purple. While Vegeta is not pleased to be denied his chance to beat on Frieza a bit, he can only smile at the coincidence that, once again, it's his own son that effectively killed that self-proclaimed emperor. Goku still gets chewed out for dropping his guard again, but no harm, no foul, right? Trunks, meanwhile, is suitably impressed with Goku's new form. A casual shrug from Vegeta confirms their suspicion. Yeah, he has it too, but Gohan doesn't, because he didn't go with them into the staff. He wanted to wait for Trunks to finish his training on Yardrat before going in with him. He hadn't quite understood why it had taken Trunks so long to learn instant transmission, but that was made clear when Trunks somehow brought him and Piccolo back to full health. He'd learned other things, so maybe Gohan would need to go back sometime to see what else there was to learn there. When Champa shows up at Beerus' planet, Goku and Vegeta are there in weighted suits to agree to the tournament. Halfway through the Destroyer's, negotiations, Whis' staff chimes and Gohan and Trunks come crashing out, much to the interest of Vados. They're training mortals in there, are they? Just what are they up to? The competition itself will of course have a few changes. Gohan still has his conference, but isn't overly concerned. In one universe or another, as long as his family is safe, what does it matter? Trunks, however, is more than happy to attend, and while there is no prize money, Zools and Lapis are keen as well. So the roster this time around is Goku, Vegeta, Trunks, Lapis, and Lazuli. Piccolo is happy to watch and learn, since he knows he is well behind even Lazuli at this stage. With the addition of their fifth, the match has changed slightly. Lazuli is up first and faces Potamo. She's not exactly a natural fighter though, so struggles with the fact that her impacts do absolutely nothing to him. The battle itself is quite long and kind of boring actually. Infinite energy versus an immovable object gets pretty dull pretty quickly. Potamo is eventually able to knock her out with a nice big belly slam. Little Marble doesn't mind though. Her mummy had been playing with that giant gummy bear, and it was hilarious. And here we will bring Part 7 to an end. The Tournament of Destroyers has begun, and it's not off to the best start for the universe. They are already down one fighter, but then they did start one fighter up from normal. Will they emerge victorious against Champa's Universe 6, or will Hit & Co. prove too much for them? I think you can probably guess, but I'll leave that to next time on Dragonball. What if time travel was a one-way ticket?